Hello everyone, this is Bibi Cameron here, and today we are going to be making these cards. And I'm going to be using new products by Simon Says Stamp, as always gorgeous. Throughout this video, I'm going to be sharing card making tips, and I hope you find them helpful. The first thing you are going to need is good cardstock, and this is Simon Says Stamp Neenah 110 grams cardstock. Is really thick, luxurious, it has a smooth finish, so the inks glide really nice on this paper and they remain vibrant. So I'm going to cut this cardstock using my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine. It's the machine I use all the time, and you see here the die will cut in one go all the pieces we need for our hummingbird. And when we have a die like this, it's ideal to cut white cardstock and then add colors using inks. That's a lot quicker than cutting different cardstock colors. And then to add colors to the die cuts, I like to use a gel press to place the die cuts over, because this doesn't stain, it's very easy to clean, and it keeps all the die cuts in place while I'm adding inks. And I'm going to use 3 ink colors here: Sprout, Cadet, and Violet. And these are the 3 only ink colors I'm going to be using today, apart from a gold ink that I'm going to show you later. So I'm going to apply this green ink at the top of the die cut like so, or in one end of the die cut, and I prefer this to be the edge of the image because this is a light and vibrant ink, right? So I'm just using a small blending brush and I quickly do that. Then I'm going to use Cadet to add ink in the back of the hummingbird, and pay attention because I'm adding that ink on the plate, and then I drag the ink towards the paper, and in that way I get a nice degradation of color. And I don't re-ink the brush very often, I just work with very little ink. When I want color intensity, then I apply more ink, as always, but you can go very light or very dark with the same ink color. Now I'm going to blend violet ink over the blue areas just to create a nice blending effect. That's completely optional, but this is the way I do it. When the inks dry, the inks tend to change the color, they kind of get subtle, so don't worry about adding too much. But of course, I'm not asking you to add too much, it's just the right amount of ink. And by this I mean that you will be able to see some light areas. It's not completely dark that you cannot see any shape there. So with the ink, you are also going to be shaping those images and those shapes. So I forgot to add ink at the tail of the hummingbird, so I'm going to add violet and a little bit of blue ink as well. And because that blue ink there was looking a little bit patchy, I decided to use a little bit more of violet ink to blend things a little bit more. So that was my coloring with these 3 inks. And now I'm going to grab this memento marker to add color to the head, or that area of the head of the hummingbird. Because this is a little bit wet, I'm going to move the die cuts a little bit on my plate, and I'm going to use this Enchanted Gold ink by Altenew, and I just want to add that ink at the beak of the hummingbird, just like that. And these add shine and a beautiful finishing touch to your die cut. You can also dab these on the pad. It will be a little bit more messy if you do that, but you can do that if you are not scared to get your hands inked. And if you like to add golden accents, as I do to my cards, this is a little hack to do that. And you can just dab the edges of your die cuts on the golden ink, like I'm doing there. And this is a lot more effective than doing it with embossing powders. It's quicker and it looks super cute. I can guarantee you that. Another way you can apply this ink is just with a blending brush, just on the edges of all your die cuts before assembling the images. And you can do this with any kind of die cut you might have. It doesn't matter if you go over the ink, it just adds a little shine and a beautiful finish. And I just want to show you here really quick how I clean my gel press. I just apply water, and with a towel I just clean it. Done. There is no stains, nothing. So now we are going to assemble the hummingbird. And I'm using here Nuvo Deluxe adhesive and the Misty glue press. All the supplies are listed in the video description. Then we are going to add that piece that has the black area. Then we are going to layer up the body of the hummingbird. And then we are going to add this detail here. I like to leave this in white. I think this adds contrast and definition to the image. And then I layer up the pieces for the wings. The wings can go in different ways. And I like to add 2 wings to the hummingbird. I think that adds a really cool effect to the little die cut, and that's it. By adding the wings in different ways, you can also achieve different looks. And once you finish completely everything, you can also apply more gold ink at the edges of the images so that you don't get any white edge. This is the way you add visual impact or eye-catching effects to your die cuts. I always use a dark ink at the edges of the die cuts. I think gold is my new favorite because it's very subtle and it adds a really nice shine. That is something I always said, I always look for that. So with the ink I have in the brush, that is very little, I'm just adding a little coat of that shine over the hummingbirds. And that's all, that's the way I color the hummingbirds. Now, because a hummingbird always needs a flower, I was looking in my stash for a die that I could use today, and I choose sunrise stem. And I'm showing you here how I add color to the flower. Same exact thing, but this time I'm adding the color in the center of the die cuts, just like that. And then I'm adding also the same ink colors that I use for the hummingbirds. But for example, for the leaves, I added the Sprout ink, that is the green ink, and then I added Cadet to darken the color. And on the petals, I use violet to darken the color. And then to add color to the center of the flowers, I use gold ink. So the same exact ink colors I use for the hummingbirds, and it's the same colors I'm going to use for the backgrounds and everything. In that way, we achieve color coordination. And everything makes more sense when we are putting together a project. Now, I'm going to start cutting some other pieces for the cards, and at the very end we are going to assemble the cards really quick. So I'm going to use this nested dome arches. It's a new die set. I love it because it cut a frame and also cut the shapes. So I'm going to cut a window in that panel there, and I'm not removing this frame here, I'm just leaving it there. And I cut a silver frame using the same die. Then I'm going to glue that silver frame there, and I'm going to make a top fold card base. This measures, when folded, 4¼ by 5½ inches. Then I'm going to grab my green brush. I haven't re-inked it, and I'm going to apply whatever ink I have in the brush on that panel. It's very little, and I'm going to do the same with a blue brush, very little. So I get like an aqua color. It's not completely blue, it's not completely green, it's just a blend of those colors. And then this is what I want to achieve. Once I know that this is going to be my layout, I'm going to stamp the sentiment, and I'm going to use that front panel to guide myself to know where I have to stamp the sentiment. I'm going to use Simon Says Stamp square foam pads to adhere this image on the card. I'm going to add the flowers, and I'm going to do some die cut surgery. So I'm going to tear up all the little leaves from these flower stems to be able to add them to my layout like I'm doing here. And I'm using the same liquid glue to adhere everything. This is the Misty Precision Glue Press, and it has a bottle of Nuvo Deluxe adhesive inside. And that's the adhesive I have been using for about 6 years, and I won't change it for anything. I love it. You can adhere acetate, you can adhere sequins with that, you can adhere everything, right? So I just add a little dot of glue, and then I place the sequins over. I don't think too much about the placement of the sequins, but the other day I heard my friend Jana Samakula saying that if you make a triangular shape with them, you will get a nice distribution of the sequins, and I thought that that's a brilliant way to explain it. Okay, so I'm adding here Nuvo Shimmer Pen for more shine. And there is a little detail that I want to share with you as well, is to add a little black dot on the hummingbird's eyes. And I'm using here Nuvo drops, and I squeeze the bottle. I have a little drop in the tip of the bottle, and then I can do that. Please don't do that directly to the paper without checking the condition of your bottle, or you will get an explosion of that there. And bye-bye card. You have to start over, okay? So that's it. That's a very simple looking card. You can create similar cards for any occasion, and you can also use different ink colors. For the second project, we are going to use this piece that is a leftover from the previous card, and I'm using a brush without inking it. I'm just rubbing it hard on that piece of cardstock to achieve a very light color. Then using this Wonky Chevron stencil that is new and has a really nice texture, I'm going to add the same ink color but slightly darker. And because it's too bluish, I'm going to add a little bit of this green ink, or the ink that is left in that brush, just to achieve an aqua kind of color. Then we are going to cut a 4 inches by 5¼ inches piece of cardstock, and I'm going to layer one of these arches over it. Then using dimensional foam pads, I'm going to adhere that stenciled piece over, just like that. Using foam pads, I'm also going to adhere the hummingbird, and I'm going to use liquid glue to add the flower and the leaves. These here are the new CC Design sentiment strips, but they good dates, and it has kind of cool sentiments, so I want to use one of those. And I like to use the Tim Holtz mini trimmer to cut banners like these ones. It provides a sharp, clean cut, and it's very easy to use. So that's what I did to cut this banner, and then I added to my card. I'm aligning the edge of that banner with the edge of the frame, and I'm also hiding the other end behind one of the wings of the hummingbird. So I'm trying to make that banner part of the design and not something I stick over it. And I forgot to mention that to choose my sequence, I tried to find those that looks like the colors I use. So I have these two blue shades here, but this one here that is called Mist looks more greenish, more aqua, and those are the shades I'm using today. So I'm going to use those sequins and this tool here that has a wax tip that allow me to easily lift the sequins or die cuts or anything from my craft table. So after adding the sequins, I then apply Nuvo Shimmer Pen, and I stick this onto a card base. So these two cards are very similar. For the next card, I'm going to create a different layout, and I'm going to be using this Wonky Chevron stencil again in a different way. I'm going to place a piece of cardstock here to protect the card base, and I'm going to tape this down so my stencil is not going to move. And I'm going to use gold ink to create like an halo around the edges of this card base. It took me a couple of minutes, but there is no need to show you all that. It's just stenciling, and then you have that golden stenciled image there. It's very subtle. And then I'm going to use that gap in the center as a frame instead of the arches frame that we used, and I'm just going to lay out all my elements around or within that area as I'm showing here. For the die cut sentiment that I'm going to add to this card, I'm using these Spellbinders pop-up die cut glitter foam sheets. This is gold, it's gorgeous, it adds a lot of dimension without the need to have to layer several die cuts. But you have to be careful when removing the foam from the die as I'm doing there, because it's very delicate. So I'm going to set this to a side, and I'm going to stamp a sentiment that coordinates with this die cut. And sadly, this is from a stamp set that has been discontinued, but any thank you sentiment will do. I really like the white space in the center, but as you see there, my thank you sentiment is crooked, and I was like, oh my gosh. And at this stage, it's kind of too late in the card making process, so I'm going to fix it. To do that, I'm going to add a golden stamped sentiment. And to stamp this gold sentiment using the Altenew ink, I'm going to stamp this 5 times or 4 times to build up the intensity of that gold ink color. So you see here, it's absolutely gorgeous, but this is super wet. You have to wait for it to dry. Once this is dry, you can add it to your projects. I'm not doing that here, so I just want to fix this in this moment to finish my video for you today. And then, even though I try to prevent this, there is not enough room to add my sentiment there. I will have to add it underneath the beak of the hummingbird. So another mistake. So I want you to learn from my mistakes. So I'm going to use this palette knife here to gently lift up the foam pads from the card without tearing the paper. It's the most effective way to do it. That will allow me to reposition my die cut and give the spacing that I need for that die cut sentiment. I tear the paper, it's a hot mess, but once you put everything back in place, you won't be able to see any of that, and you will never know that that happened there. The thing is that I know, and I don't know if you are like me, but I will tend to repeat the whole thing again, and I'm forcing myself to get things done and move on and bypass these kind of mistakes. This is an invitation for you to forgive yourself when you are making mistakes also, and starting for me. So look at the way I was trying to fix this. You know, I like to add the banners in a way that you don't see the edges of the banners. So when I was doing that, the palette knife again, I lifted up this part here to be able to place that underneath the tail, and the other end of the banner didn't reach the flower. So I just added a little leaf there to cover the end of that banner there. Then I added some sequins, and I also added Nubo shimmer pen. And this card was finished. So that's the way I rescued this card from going to the paper craft heaven. So there you go, 3 card making ideas for you using exactly the same supplies in different ways. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do not forget to subscribe to my channel or visit my blog for more ideas and inspiration. There is a blog hub today in my blog with giveaways for you. So I hope you can have a look as well, and the link to the blog hub is also in the video description. Thank you very much for watching, and happy crafting. Bye!